are so glad that you're here. I'm Beth Geddes-Sturkey, and I've had the honor of working with a dynamic, dedicated group of chapel choir members and chapel staff members to put together this little tiny party we're having tonight in honor of a really wonderful person. I've been a chapel choir member since the new millennium, and that sounds pretty impressive, doesn't it? Yeah, not so much. Let's think about how long Rodney Wynkoop has been the conductor of the chapel choir and the director of chapel music. 29 years. That's impressive. You gotta get your sons to clap. That would be helpful. So tonight we'll remember and celebrate Rodney. We'll celebrate our opportunities to be with him singing, laughing, listening, worshiping, traveling, learning, and deepening our understanding of and love for God through music. We'll have a chance to hear from each of the deans with whom he has worked. Can y'all hear me? I don't know if you want to. We'll hear from chapel choir members and colleagues. We'll look back and we will look forward. And we'll have a chance to hear from Rodney himself, all in this very brief program we hope it will be. We do hope that you'll enjoy this as much as we've enjoyed preparing it. It's really been a labor of love on the part of a lot of people. I'd love for you to turn your program over and look at the list of people who are being thanked. There's a lot, and we are grateful, grateful, grateful to them. So speaking of Rodney, before we get started, I'd like to ask the maestro to come up for just a minute. Not so fast. Thank you for taking a moment. At the beginning of this program, we realized this has been a really full day, so thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad to be here. You've had an extraordinary career at the chapel, and tonight we get to honor that time we've had with you, we get to honor you, and we get to really celebrate a wonderful, wonderful career. You know, speaking of careers, given your enormous talent and drive, it seems like you would have been able to do just most anything that you set out to do. Seems, however, is the operative word. We have been doing some digging, and we understand that this is not the first career that you have taken on. That's true. In fact, I have a secret dossier that we had a great time finding out about. So yeah, this dossier tells us some really interesting things about you professionally, of course. Yeah. So apparently your first job was not as a choral conductor, but as a train conductor.
That's true. A little known fact, that was my first career ambition.
Yeah, and that did not go well. Yeah, according to this little dossier, it says you spent most of your time trying to get the crew to sing polyphonic railroad songs, retuning the train whistle. Did you try to get it to an A? Is that what you were trying to do? Yeah. And sending out revision after revision after revision. Train schedule.
Sadly, all true.
Yeah, so I just can't see him with, like, you know, the conductor's hat. Just doesn't seem quite right. So after that, you became a maitre d',
Yes, that was the next job. In fact, that's where I got this outfit.
Yeah. That didn't go so well either, right?
No, not well at all. You know, I thought it was very important that everyone in the dining room sit and stand together. Giving the place a dignifying kind of unity. And so when they made reservations, I sent them very detailed instructions about exactly when to sit and exactly when to stand. They were terrible at following directions. Very noisy standers. I had to move on.
And then the last thing you did before this esteemed career you've had all this time is you were actually a preacher. Is that correct?
Yes. Again, not a success.
This says that you kept interrupting prayers to work on the congregation's unison and exploding consonants.
Yes, Beth, it's not Lord have mercy, it's Lord. That's a phony D. Lord, pause, no breath, have mercy. Christ, lots of K. Christ, pause, no breath, have mercy.
I just can't imagine why that didn't work out well for you. I just don't understand. The other thing that I was so amazed about with this dossier is it says that you actually applied for a preaching position at Duke Chapel when Dean Will Williman quickly approached you and begged you to become the choir director.
Yes, and
I wonder why.
that's how my career in Duke Chapel music began.
Rodney, I'm so sorry that these other things didn't work out. I'm really sad for you, but we are so glad that you finally found your right career. So we celebrate you, and we are happy that you've done this for a lot of years. Straight face, Beth, yes. So now I'd like to officially begin our program. And to do so, I want to say a sincere thank you to Dean Luke Powery, our host. As most of you know, Luke has his own great knowledge about and deep love of music. Luke arrived at Duke in 2012 and has worked closely with Rodney on worship planning, introducing new programs in chapel music, and continuing the rich heritage of musical excellence in worship and concerts. Luke, where are you? There you are. We are so grateful that you have encouraged the choir members and the staff to honor Rodney in this way, and thank you real honestly because I know you're the one that's paying the tab.
As you can tell, this evening is serious and it has some levity. I will not look at Karen Steinhauser the same again. Wow. Let me say welcome officially to this special evening for a special person, Dr. Rodney Wynkoop, who has served faithfully for 29 years at Duke Chapel. I specifically would like to thank all of those, and Beth already pointed to it, those who have planned tonight's event. There is that list on the back, all of the care, all of the time, the energy, the love that went into making this event what it is. Thank you. I'm also delighted to see Rodney's mother and his two sons here, Andrew and Paul, and other family members to celebrate this, as well as all of you who fill this room this evening. Your presence is really a testament to the impact Rodney has had on Duke and Duke Chapel for over 29 years, actually. And so we are grateful to you and for your presence. Over the years, thousands, literally thousands of individuals have contributed to the chapel music program. And many of you are in this room. And so on behalf of the entire staff at Duke Chapel, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you for being a friend of Duke Chapel. This evening, in many ways, is bittersweet, as someone wrote in an email to me not too long ago. Sweet, because we get to express our gratitude to Rodney while he's still with us. Bitter, bitter because he's retiring from his chapel position. And so tonight, Rodney, we honor you with seriousness and levity. But in tribute to Rodney, this is my tribute. Let me say this as my linguistic Eucharist. I could say many things about him, such as being our resident sermon timekeeper, as I said this afternoon. I might say, oh, Rodney, I think I went for 17 minutes. And you say, well, Luke, actually, it was 18 minutes and 36 seconds. That's Rodney Wynkoop, precise. But Rodney really is the sacred music laureate of Duke Chapel. When I think of him, I think of what was said of Christ in the Christ hymn of Philippians 2. Though he was in the form of God, he emptied himself, which is known as kenosis. In the same way, musically speaking, Rodney has emptied himself, has performed a musical kenosis, pouring out every ounce of his life as a love offering to God and others. And because of his emptying, we have been filled with grace and melodies and lifted higher to God, even to the heights of the angels. So Rodney, thank you for lifting us up to God through your music, your ministry, and your life. I know you often speak of choir love as the chapel choir signs their emails. But as you look across this room this evening, I hope you also sense the chapel love for you. You are loved. We'll miss you. We love you. May God bless you and keep you now and forever.
Thank you, Luke. We appreciate that very much. So when we look at Rodney's leadership over the many years, we see that he really has. Rodney? What are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing?
See really well from up here.
Yeah. So, Rodney, you need to understand that going forward, you are not going to be able to just stand up on pews or chairs or whatever you want to, whenever you want to, wherever you want to, just to be able to see well. Rodney.
I have my own sign then. It's reserved.
Rodney, there is nothing reserved about you. Thank you. Now someone can have that seat if you would like to. She's not coming back into that one. So, back to what I was saying. As choir members, members, we've had amazing and unforgettable opportunities to sing together. We've gotten to travel, to worship, to find great joy in what Luke was just talking about, choir family. At Duke Chapel, we've done this, and then all over the world. We asked choir members and others to send us photos of Rodney and their choir experiences. We also asked for videos, we asked for all sorts of things, and I must tell you the response was overwhelming. Rodney, you will have something to do for the next, 20 years, sing all this. As we reviewed the photos chronologically, though, we've noticed something that a lot of people have probably noticed as well, and so I need to ask you, Rodney, how is it that you don't seem to age at all when everyone else does? Okay, no answer, I've got that, okay. Rodney, we want to assure you that you will receive all these photos, but for now, we want to present you a photo history, a compilation of the choir's experiences with you that have been truly unforgettable. Was sure done with a lot of love. So So now we change our location a bit. Speaking of from all around the world, our next speaker comes to us from Trafalgar Square in London, England. Dean Sam Wells arrived at Duke Chapel from England in 2005 and worked closely with Rodney until 2012. That picture of the three guys with the hats, that was Sam's going away. The choir under Rodney's leadership did some interesting things when the Wellses came. They came to a choir rehearsal and Rodney had us sing the Hallelujah chorus. It was all very exciting. And then at some point we discovered what Sam's birthday was, and while he was still across the pond, we climbed to the top of the tower and sang Happy Birthday by phone, all the way over there. That was really fun. So, Sam and Rodney collaborated on worship and strong engagement with students. Sam continued Dean Will Williman's deep love for the sacred choral music sung by the choir, and it was pretty amazing how he taught us to say words in a really weird way. I'll never forget the first time he said Isaiah. It was a little weird. So, anyway, cue up Sam.
Rodney, it's almost impossible for any of us to imagine you not being at the chapel or imagining the chapel without you. And that's not just for the length of time you've served or for the wonderful things you've done. It's, I believe, because you've been a priest at the chapel. And you might be shy of me saying that, but you've created in the chapel choir an instrument. And that instrument has done two things. It's shown God to the people, and it's shown the people to God. It's represented the people to God, and it's represented God to the people. And it's done so in wonderful and memorable ways. That's what priests do. They represent the people to God, and they represent God to the people. You've made the choir into something that's been a priest for the congregation and the campus. But you've also done some other things, some remarkable things. First of those, I think, is that you've made the team that is chapel music and the choir more than the sum of its parts. You've created an extraordinary team that has done beautiful things. And the second thing, perhaps even more important, is you've brought out of people gifts and talents and skills greater than they ever knew they had. Talents that has made the choir something beyond the imagination of any of its individual members. And the third thing and final thing that you've done, and perhaps the most important thing, is that you've given people a vision of what it means to be around the throne of grace, to be in the presence of God. And the chapel and the chapel's choir and its music have done that in ways that have left a mark on thousands and thousands of people's lives, and on mine too. People love you, Rodney, because you've done those three things, and they're amongst the most special things that you can do for any other human being. And I love you, Rodney, because you've done those things for me. Thank you for your service to the chapel. Have a wonderful evening. I miss you.
Influence he has been on my life. From undergraduate to graduate student, to teacher, to graduate school, to medical school, to residency, to fellowship, to now being a local physician, perhaps the most stable aspect of this circuitous life journey has been singing with Rodney and his choirs. In sad times, happy times, busy times, even chaotic times, singing in the chapel choir under Rodney has grounded me in a place of community, faith, and love. And I can't thank him enough. I can't thank you enough for this steadying and life-enriching presence in my life. In soliciting others' reflections on how Rodney changed and has touched their lives, I was excited to sift through many unique tributes, many stories from Rodney's singers over the past 29 years, all in service to the Duke Chapel community. Here are just a few of the many tributes we received over the past couple of months. There are many others that I look forward to allowing you to hear and see over the coming days and months. So enjoy, Rodney. This is all for you.
Rodney, we can never thank you enough for recognizing the unique character of this choir family and demonstrating genuine love and care for each and every one of us. You've been our teacher, conductor, leader, and friend.
Good evening. As chapel choir president, I've had the great honor of working with Rodney and learning from his leadership. He has always fostered student input in how we nurture a learning and welcoming space for all students. In particular, he asks for a lot of student input about how to best communicate about chapel choir and music to students and beyond. So I thought we could take a look at an idea I've had about next steps in communication. Rodney, can you come out? Hi, Rodney.
Good to see you, Zoe.
Good to see you too. Glad you were able to get here to review this in person. I sent you a file. Could you take out your laptop and open the file I sent?
Get my glasses on. I've got it right here, Zoe. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
Oh no. I will not be needing a paper file. It's the 21st century. We're going to use an electronic means. Better let me handle this. Yeah, I've been thinking, with you retiring from the chapel, it's time for you to move your message beyond the chapel walls and have a social media presence. You can use this presence whenever you want to communicate with singers and music lovers alike. You have a lot of followers in reality, but imagine how many you could have virtually. It's time you started tweeting.
Excuse me?
Twitter, I've put together an account for you. This is where people can they can follow you at the real RWs.
I thought they followed me here.
Rodney, it's 2018. I've been taking some notes on key advice you offer. You know, things you've actually said in rehearsals.
This can't be good.
Some of these I've witnessed, and some, well, let's just say I've done some archival research.
Do I need to seek legal counsel?
Probably. I've put together a top 10 list of some classic Rodney statements. Anyway, I think that it's a good start to test out this new way to communicate. Let's take a look. I'll walk you through it. Speaking of bases, you're behinder than everyone else is behind. Hashtag rise to rehearsal. Hashtag birth to bases. Hashtag get your behind moving.
Well, that's true.
What a powerful performance last night. In the tempo each of you sang. Your mission today, should you choose to accept it, is to sing in one tempo. Preferably mine. Hashtag train wreck. Hashtag watch the guy waving arms. this mystery is still unsolved. Hashtag woof. Hashtag send help.
Hashtag that ain't Pavarotti.
That's right. Make mistakes boldly, like the basses do all the time. Hashtag their sound has gone out. Hashtag go bold, please. Hashtag sorry, not sorry, basses.
I'm thinking you had a lot of material for the basis.
In fact, we had so much I had to cut it down to just a few. This line seems to be showing us how Christ stayed pure until we beat him down a half step. Hashtag whoops. Hashtag sorry God. Hashtag love you, mean it.
No words.
Amazing performance. A Christian practice. Hashtag favorite holiday. Hashtag darn autocorrect. Hashtag Christus Factus.
So it's my voice recognition software.
Stupid shepherds. Stupid, illiterate, but warm-hearted shepherds. They're not dookies. Probably UNLV students. Hashtag
I've mellowed since those days.
those of you over 50, clean it up. Hashtag the vibrato that ate Durham. Hashtag dear old people.
You know who you are.
Sopranos, prepare the high note so that it doesn't sound like Anne Boleyn having her head cut off. Hashtag treble trouble. Hashtag heads will roll. Hashtag ears pierced. The Lord is undivided, and he only gave one pitch at a time. You're taking the triune God a bit far. Try the in tune God. Hashtag in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hashtag self-honey. You try to sing this Elijah Rock in these prim bodies, and you have the disjunction that even God can't figure out. Hashtag disjunction junction. What's your function?
Hashtag Moses Hogan rolling in his grave.
And finally, you're applauding my endurance, aren't you? Hashtag Centrum Silver. Punchline. Rodney, just think. We could send these tweets out all at once, and it could be your very first tweet storm.
Lord have mercy.
Any last words?
It is finished.
Who knew Karen Steinhauser could be so funny? Okay, now we have to calm down. Sort of. So, now we're pleased to hear from the person who ably served as the interim dean of the chapel in 2004 and 2005 academic year. Craig Coker attended that light blue school, and we're not talking about UNLV, for his undergraduate degree, but he saw the light and came to Duke Divinity School for his Master's of Divinity. A few years later, he was called back to Duke to serve as the Associate Dean of Duke Chapel, and then he took on the interim job when Dean Williman left. Craig has the nickname Boy Preacher Perhaps that was given by Rodney. I don't know. And we all wonder if maybe he and Rodney have this secret for how to always look young. Even after Sam Wells' arrival, Craig and Rodney continued to work together until Craig and his wife, who also was a pastor at Duke Chapel, left for Richmond. Craig, we're so grateful you've come all the way from Richmond, and you're on.
Well, thank you, Beth. And Zoe, hashtag, I don't want to follow that. It's delightful. Well, I bring you greetings as well from Abby, who served on the chapel staff for a few years, and our daughters, Caroline and Catherine. They are in Richmond tonight and weren't able to join us. When I think of Rodney and our time together, I think of two words. The first word that comes to mind is excellence. Rodney simply inspired excellence and continues to inspire excellence. I remember when I joined the chapel staff, the M&Ms, or the ministers and musicians, as we called ourselves, would meet every Monday afternoon, and what we do during that time together is we go over the Sunday service that we just had, and then we plan for the service that was yet to come down the road that Sunday, the next few Sundays, on and on. And what I realized is that when Rodney didn't meet his own standards of excellence, he told you about it. And when you didn't meet his own standards of excellence, he told you about it. When I came to the chapel staff, I was like 27 years old, and I was so intimidated by Rodney. I was not intimidated by Will, by the way. But I was deeply intimidated by Rodney, and these interactions in the M&M's meetings, you know, he's timing sermons, he's saying you were too late getting to the podium when you should have gotten there. It was very intimidating and made me rather uncomfortable. And then over the years, I came to really appreciate it, because I realized what he was doing is he cared so much about what we were doing together. He wanted us to be excellent. And so what it inspired me to was to be better than I would have been otherwise, and to try to truly be excellent. So thank you, Rodney, for that. I know that many others in this room have experienced that same sense, not just in the chapel staff, but throughout the choir, a feeling that we could be better than they would have been. And he drew out something excellent in us. The second word that comes to mind when I think about Rodney is joy. Rodney is a profoundly joyful person, deeply joyful. And I see this joy in so many ways, in just sort of running into him tonight. I didn't see him. He came up behind me and gave me a bear hug. I didn't know who it was, but of course it was Rodney, a face full of joy. When you see him in the halls of downstairs in the catacombs of Duke Chapel, and what I do is it's a joyful greeting. On Sunday mornings, watching Rodney conduct is a joyful experience. Great joy in his face and in his body. Great joy that he is eliciting from everybody around him. And I have this sense, this incredible privileged sense of sitting in that chancel and feeling as if I were a part of something full of great joy. Hearing these joyful voices all around me. And I continue to believe that the closest I've ever gotten to heaven on this side of the Jordan is Easter morning in the chancel of Duke Chapel, watching Rodney conduct with that great joy and hearing the voices of those joyful choir members all around me. I'm so grateful for that joy. Sometimes when we come home from worship at Duke Chapel, and this was pre-children, so I didn't have to worry about them, and I assumed Abby was someplace in another part of the house. I'd walk around the house going like this. And one time, I didn't see her there, but Abby comes around the corner and she says, "What are you doing?" And said, I'm pretending to be Rodney. And Abby looked at me and she said, you are no Rodney. She said, I know Rodney, I've worked with Rodney. You are no Rodney. And that is true. It is also true that there is no other Rodney. And that's why we're going to miss you so much. Thank you for all that you've given to me, gifts of joy and excellence and so much more. And thank you for what you've given to all of us.
For those of you who are standing, I promise it's almost done. We saved, I don't know, the best for last, is that right? So we conclude our tributes by our deans who have worked with Rodney, with the person who hired Rodney. Thank you, Will Williman, for having the foresight and the brilliance to make that hire. We are very grateful. Will and Rodney worked together for 15 years before Will departed to become Bishop of Northern Alabama. Will traveled with the chapel choir and guided us spiritually. We even had a concert when we left, when Will and Patsy left, because that's what he asked for. He wanted the choir to sing. So we've been a part of your life and you've been a part of ours for a long time. And the closest, obviously, is with Rodney. I know that Craig was talking about those M&M's meetings and how fun they were. I just want to know, did you think about candy the whole time that you were having the meeting? I don't know. So I ask you to welcome Bishop Will Williman.
So many memories. It's not. Rodney, I talked to you about boundaries. Rodney, when I remember you, this is how I shall always remember you. Sometimes the Rodney, the alpha male, overcomes the OCD Rodney. And it's ugly when it happens. But I shall always remember you attempting to dominate me. So, but thank you, Rodney. Rodney?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to let me talk?
I thought maybe you wanted to recreate our photo.
I don't know why you need to do this, but
Yeah, I think where's our photographer, Jenna? Or
all right.
There she is. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Professional associate. Desperate for director of chapel music. Remembering that Rodney Wynkoop not only loved great classical Christian music, but also greasy, trashy Southern food. I invited him to meet me at Honey's. I said to Rodney, let me get right to the point. God wants you to be the new director of Duke Chapel Music. Rodney peevishly said, oh, so God talks to you? And I said, yeah, on a weekly basis. Except when there's a guest preacher. And, well, Rodney said yes, and the result of that is this grand history that we celebrate this night. I remember I had learned that Rodney was a math major at Yale, so I figured he was anal retentive. And so I told him when he was hired, I said, you know, I think your great challenge is going to be to fall in love with that great, big, sprawling chapel choir. And I remember vividly, toward the end of November, Rodney and I were going downstairs after service, after the choir had done a wonderful rendition of I Was Glad, and Rodney said, I think I'm in love. Well, the fruit of that love has brought us together tonight. I remember exactly where I was when Rodney told me that Andrew and Paul were on the way. And a couple of years later, I observed Rodney trying to discipline either Andrew or Paul. It's hard to tell. Rodney said, Andrew, or maybe it was Paul, stop kicking the back of the pew. And Andrew or Paul said, no. And Rodney just got catatonic. He had never had anyone in any of his choirs with enough guts to be able to stand up to Rodney to say no. And I said, Rodney, those two boys are an answer to a prayer. Because some of us have prayed that God would find a way to cure you of some of your fastidiousness, and God is answering that prayer. Thank you, Andrew and Paul. I remember Christmas Eve one year, David Arcus composed a wonderful sung Eucharistic prayer to the tune of Angels We've Heard on High. So at the Ministers and Musicians meeting before Christmas Eve, I announced that I would be singing the Eucharistic prayer to Angels We've Heard on High. Rodney said peevishly, you think that wise? And I said, yeah, I'm in charge and I'm singing it. And, well, during the post-Christmastide Ministers and Musicians evaluation, Rodney, looking over his glasses, said, well, I hope you've gotten out of your system that desire to sing. I said, Rodney, I'll have you know, I've heard from many people that my singing on Christmas Eve was the highlight of the Christmas Eve service. Many people have said that. He said, what people? I said, women, many women, discerning women. And Rodney said, I'll need to see a list of those names before we'll ever do that again. If Rodney had encouraged me, I could have been the Placido Domingo of Durham, but he didn't. And then New Year's Eve, we fled the Stalinist unheated Hotel Crack. And we were out in the square there in Krakow. And the chapel choir huddled together with 0 degrees, snow on the ground, and New Year's Eve. And this whining sophomore came up to Rodney and said, I bought a quart of peach vodka off this Polish guy, and the preacher just jerked it out of my hand and drank it. And Rodney said, I'm glad that you see what we're working with here. And then Rodney said, perhaps because he's stolen so much material from other preachers, this just came easily for him. But I also remember in Poland there at the Shrine of the Black Madonna, and that beautiful sacred place just hallowed by the piety of the ages there, the marble, the worshipers and the chapel choir, never been better singing in Polish and old Slavonic, and it was just mystical and wonderful. And then at the end of the concert, the bishop presiding over it gestured, Rodney went over to him. So Rodney came back to the podium and said to the choir, and now we should sing Jingle Bells. A popular request. And it was wonderful. When I became bishop in Bama, I wrote Rodney a long letter saying, I've realized down here that the only training I've really had in leadership is watching you lead. And I said, I just remember all those Sundays when we were all tired from the week before and everything. You would step up that podium and just smile, and I could tell from the tips of your fingers what the choir would be singing, how well they would be singing that day, and just the energy that you were able to convey to the choir from that podium. It's been a great lesson to me. And I said, chiefly, I love that, the evil eye that you would give the tenors, the errant tenors. And I said, Rodney, would you write down how you do the evil eye? Because I want to give that to some Methodists in Alabama. That is so effective. Well, I'll tell you, there was so many Sundays when the Lord had to push and pull me into that pulpit after the choir, under Rodney's leadership, had sung the gospel so well. There was just no way that I could preach the gospel any better than Rodney and the choir had sung the gospel. And I'd meet people, they'd come out at the door and they'd say, oh, we've driven all the way from Gilpay Arena to be here. We've come all the way from Wilmington to be here. And I said, oh, well, I hope you enjoyed the sermon. They said, we're not here for that, we're here for music. I said, well, great, I'll tell Dr. Wynkoop. Yeah. When Rodney took over, one of the first things he did for 30 years, the services at chapel had always ended with the singing of the sevenfold Amen, or maybe it was the 12-fold, 14-fold. Anyway, but Rodney trashed that, and he put in John Rutter's God Be in My Head, and it, of course, became the great signature piece of Rodney's work. And God Be in My Head is a 13th century prayer from Old Sarum. God be in my head. God be in my understanding. God be in my feeling. God, I believe in Rodney's years among us, God was in it. God blessed Rodney so he could bless us. And God in our head and in our understanding and our thinking and in the words, in the music. God, even in Rodney's ending and departing. And so that's why we say, thank you, Lord, for Rodney.
We'd like to have the choir members come on stage as we bring to a close our wonderful event tonight. I'm Jan Guire, one of the chapel choir members. And when I first joined the chapel choir 26 years ago, actually Dean Williman came to an early rehearsal and spoke to the choir members with funny and encouraging comments about Rodney. I'll never forget the most important thing Will said, and I quote, "You know, Rodney is not just a talented musician and a conductor. He really gets this stuff." Referring to the deep faith that Rodney would be sharing with his choir. For 29 years as our conductor, Rodney would constantly reach for excellence in his choir. He encouraged each member to improve in breath control and pitch and numerous other skills so important to making beautiful music. Rodney also takes the time to help us understand the meanings of the sacred music so that we might also connect with God and deepen our own faith journeys. The movement of Rodney's hands uphold and guide our choir, and we watch intensely, learning as we sing and finding the meaning he wants us to share with the listeners. And when our skills and our understandings merge, it must be as though the angels have charge over us and all of us are blessed. Rodney, we'd like you to come up and join your choir for a few minutes.
I'm scared of what's under there.
Sure. Facing our choir has a history of designing a quilt as a gift for departing members of our choir, and sadly we must say goodbye to our conductor. In this abstract quilt, Gifts of the Spirit, we try to illustrate the gifts of the Holy Spirit falling on our conductor, who then reaches out to each of us with love and inspiration. And Gina will show our small gift for Rodney. With our full hearts, Rodney, we give you this gift. As we bring this wonderful evening to a close, we wish to share a benediction for you with all the love the choir can give you.
say here. And probably little needs to be said, because the people who've spoken have shown what life at the chapel and in the chapel choir has been like. I do want to say, yet again, thanks to all the people who put in work to make this possible, and that includes people on our staff that have not been thanked. Dean Powery, Amanda Hughes, thank you for your support of this craziness here. Andy Ray, Ava West, and also chapel music staff Mike Lyle and Erica Thomas. All of these people, the ones I know about, they also had help from James Todd and Rachel White. So I want to say thanks to all of those people for making a really wonderful, quite amazing, and often embarrassing ceremony. Also, part of my family has been acknowledged. I want to say thanks to them for coming, in some cases from very far away. Of course, my sons, Andrew and Paul, most of you know and find good ways to tease. But, sorry, the lights are, there we go. I'll just peer over my glasses, shall I? Andrew and Paul have come from near the end of their semester at Furman and Haverford, so I'm grateful for that. My three beloved siblings are here, Annie, Randy, and Dale. Randy's wife, Patty, my niece, Ashley, her friend, Erica, and the source for all of this family, who was my first piano teacher and the first love of my life, my incredibly loving mother, Gwendolyn. Dean Powery mentioned this, but I also want to affirm the gratitude that all of us at the chapel feel to those of you who are donors, who help us do the things that we do at the incredibly high level that we try to do them. And we do not take that for granted, and hope that we're grateful that you think what we're doing is something to be cherished and continued. I think what I'm going to do is throw away the rest of my speech, which wasn't very good anyhow, and just say, ask us all just to take a perspective for a second about what Duke Chapel is and what it offers all of us. How many places can you think of, A, they're that beautiful, but B, that have a great variety of very good preachers who come, and I'm talking from the perspective of 29 years. Just how many great preachers have we heard over the years? I've been in church 1,500 Sundays in this position. Well, I took one off. I had the plague. I feel so grateful for the opportunity to have worked with three deans, Will and Sam and Luke, and I know all of us who have been with those deans share that gratitude for their leadership, for their support of the music program here. I have had the great pleasure of working with three very gifted organists, Bob Parkins, David Arcus, and Kit Jacobson, whose playing and improvisation so frequently have moved me to tears, and probably many of you as well. And I don't mean because they missed the notes. I also give thanks and a shout out to the only caroliner I know who has been in his position for 53 years, Sam Henry. We are so blessed, folks. John Santayani, you don't know what he does, but he makes Bob's and Kit's lives really a lot easier than it might otherwise be, and he does brilliant work. So I'm also grateful to the many people on the chapel music staff who have helped to make the events that we do possible, but aren't necessarily there in the doing of them. And I mean principally Michael Al and Erica Thomas, who are incredible and helpful people. And now we have Philip Cave as well, and I tell you, you are going to enjoy the interim year of singing with Philip. He is a gifted musician and a superb human being, and I wish him and you all the best with that. I was just trying to think what hadn't been said here. And one of the things that needs to be said is that as much as you think you've learned from me or gotten from me, I want you to know I learn from all of you, and I don't mean just the choir. I learn every time somebody after church comes up to me and says, I didn't have any music in my life, and I came five years ago, and suddenly music is in my life and I love it again. You know, that changes a person. Nearly every week, somebody says to me after the worship service, that last piece, whatever it's called, God head. People find solace and comfort and closure to say, we've worshiped God, all is good, be well. And it sits in them and it nourishes them for a long time. That changes you, knowing the impact it has on people. As Will mentioned, my sons have changed me, and I'm grateful for that. Teaching me no, and that no isn't the end of the world, and teaching me patience. And the choir also has taught me how much a group of people can unify their sense of purpose and can focus on a long-term goal and just find a way to do it. And they've taught me how possible it is for people to be able to go farther than they ever thought they could before. To strive just a little farther and say, I'm not going to give up. I can do it with help from 99 friends. And they do it. And God bless you, Chapel Choir. You have done so many things that a betting person wouldn't have bet you could do. You know, to learn the Macmillan Sacred Country. I don't know what I was thinking programming that. But actually I do. Actually I do. Because I looked at that music and I said, they'll do that. It won't be easy. And when you showed up on one icy, snowy day, where we wouldn't be allowed to meet in the chapel anymore, but that day you came, and I didn't even ask you to. I assumed you'd stay home, and worked and worked and worked, and we found a way to do it. And you wouldn't stop until it was perfect. I think that we all look to how do I want to say this? We look to find commonality in other people. One of the things I learned from the chapel choir, though, is to look for a little bit of divinity in every person, a little bit of God in every person, and to understand them through that portal. And it's just an amazing feeling to see people who approach life and people that way. It's amazing. I think that The one thing that we all, let me back up. A dear friend of mine who is a chapel choir member wrote me a few days ago. And he said he'd been thinking about the question of what was all the music for? He's trying to think, why do we do this? And I put the letter aside before I came to his answer, and I thought about it. And eventually he came up with pretty much the same thing that I would say, and I bet you is shared by a lot of people in this room. We try to make beautiful music that shows us God. Even just a tiny glimpse, that incredible power, that incredible vision of God that keeps us centered and faithful. And if I've helped you do that some, I'm grateful for that. I know you've helped me do that, all of you. And I thank you for taking the time and having the willingness to tease and spend some serious time as well, just reflecting on what has been happening in the chapel, in the music program for the last years. I thank you so much.